Hello. We're going to get kinky today. I mean, we're not. We're just going to talk about kinks. and I'm very excited to have my dear friend Unnati join me really soon. Um, we met on the internet and they actually attended one of my workshops, and then we decided to facilitate that workshop together. And yeah, now we're internet best friends. Come, dear. Why is it taking you so long? Hi, Arun. Hi, Udayan. Hi, Salman. Okay. Wait, touch you. My makeshift stand for my phone. Hopefully, it does not fall in the middle of the session. Yeah, like we thought that it was important to talk about this topic because there are a lot of misconceptions around kinks and like the BDSM culture. And in fact, like I learned so much about consent from BDSM culture. And Unnati and I did a workshop where we actually told our participants that they could pick a safe word, and they could use the safe word whenever, and we would get in touch with them, and maybe we redirect the course of the session, or we stop the session, or whatever. We figure with the person. So and a participant did end up using the safe word, and what they wanted to do was step away from the session, and we let them. So yeah, thank you, Rashi. I'm going to send Unnati. Unnati, will you just send me a request so that it's easier for me? Okay, great. Okay. Going colored, so you have to really appreciate that. What a lovely cupboard.
I did not know that my live was going to do that to me. But hi, it's going great. How are you?
Get into your hair, so let's do that. Let's like show our audience your hair and how amazing it looks.
Okay. I don't know if you can see my
Can.
hair, but
Unnati actually did this in tribute to me because I love blues music.
yes, let's go with that story. Yeah.
I'm gonna give like a quick shout out to my friend who made these amazing. Can you see? Yeah, these are a pair of clitorises, clitori. How would you say it? What is the plural
Clitori.
of
Clitori, yeah.
clitor? Really?
Yeah.
What? I've never used clitori in a sentence before, so great. Um, awesome. So let me introduce you to our audience. Unnati is a psychologist. They are an amazing artist. They're a writer, researcher. They're also the head of content development at the Thought Company. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Okay. And an intersectional feminist, anti-caste, and all that good stuff, like queer affirmative practitioner, all of that. So, Unnati, yeah, let's just jump straight into it. Tell us a little bit about, what kinks are. What does it mean to be kinky? You often like hear it being used in almost a negative connotation, especially to shame people who've been assigned female at birth, right? So, tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about what it means to be kinky and what are kinks.
So, when you look for sort of definitions of kink on the internet, you will find that a lot of times these definitions talk about acts, sexual acts that are not normative in nature. But I'm not going to get into that because I don't know what normative sexual acts are supposed
Exactly.
to be, right?
Yeah.
So essentially, kinks, the word kink means a bend, right? So it was developed to talk about acts that were not straight or vanilla in nature.
Hmm.
And it was brought in at a time where sex was an act that was mainly supposed to be procreative in nature. and not something that is viewed as a source of pleasure. Okay. So, but if you look at kink, what does kink mean? It essentially means quirk, right? Uh, anyone who has a quirky view of sexuality, anything about their sexuality that is considered different or not something that you've come across often, you would call them kinky, right? But
Right.
kink is anything that you think you've not been familiarized with, essentially. So, for example, for person A, BDSM can be kinky, whereas for person B who's very well versed with BDSM and has never or rarely even engaged in vanilla sex is kinky,
Right.
right?
Right.
So the definition of kink is a very subjective one. What is one's kink can only and only be decided by that one person.
Right.
And if we were to look at it from uh, an inclusive perspective, kink is simply something that you um, don't know everything about, or you're not too familiar with it, and engaging in that particular act excites you or brings some amount of um, newness to your sexual experience.
Right. Right. And there's this idea that it's only just handcuffs or whips. It could be that for somebody, but like you very rightly said, for somebody it may. I don't know if like for the first time you're experiencing maybe queer sex and you haven't necessarily like started to identify as queer. It's just something that you're trying out, you're not sure. That could be a kinky experience for you, should you choose to call it kinky, right?
Yeah.
Like it's such a spectrum, like everything, and that's what like we keep trying to say, that and everything is so fluid. It's not so fixed. It's not that A, B, C, D factors need to be fulfilled in order for something to be kinky or not kinky. So okay, love that answer. Um, Second, second question to you is, you mentioned BDSM, and often like this idea of what BDSM, like firstly, what is BDSM, right? And also tell us why there is this misconception, and if it is a misconception, that BDSM is like very rooted in violence, it is assault, it is something that demeans people of a particular gender, it's not pleasurable, etc. Like there are all these misconceptions when it comes to it. So if you could just clarify a little bit.
Yeah, so BDSM has a lot of full forms, so to speak, but essentially it's a shortened version to explain bondage, discipline, sadomasochism, and dominance or submission,
Yeah.
right? A lot of these words have the same starting initial letter, so it's sort of all just put together and people call it BDSM. So a lot of people think
Right.
that that's all it is, that bondage means tying people up, discipline
Right.
means whipping people, um,
Yeah.
and
Giving them.
dominance, submission is a lot to do with how 50 Shades of Grey has bastardized it.
Ew.
Um, and sadomasochism is something that people sort of feel that, there's a sadist and that sadist couples with a masochist, and there's just an exchange of pain or an exchange of violence. That's how most people view it. But
Mm.
it's actually like it's very far from what actually goes down, because when we talk about bondage, it's not the act of being bound, but more to do with uh, a sort of power play
Right.
between consenting parties,
Right.
where one person consents to giving up certain amounts of control to their mobility,
Mm.
you know, and that's how they sort of that bond is created between the two of them. When we
Right.
look at discipline,
Mm.
discipline is again it's mental play,
Mm.
where while there might be rewards and punishments, so to speak, that are used that are physical in nature, like spanking or whipping, there is a lot more um, depth to it psychologically when we talk about discipline. It could be, um, you know, mental play could look like there is a maybe there's a dom with a sub who has a foot fetish, and um, the dom is trying to create this sort of discipline in the sub and says something like, if you don't behave, I will come over there and make you lick my feet. Now, that isn't necessarily a punishment or something that saddens the submissive person. But the conflict is in following the dom's order or getting what you want, right? If there is greater conflict there, rather than just saying, oh, you do this, I'll punish you. If you don't do this, then I'll reward you. It's not as simplistic as that. Um, submission and dominance is something that a lot of people think, dominance means pushing people against the walls and like possibly just like having a lot of um, rough sex. But that's
Yeah.
not what a dom sub relationship has to
It could,
necessarily look like. If that's what you want your relationship to look like, well and great, but that is not all it is. It's a very unfair thing to assume that everything that we're talking about is very unidimensional in nature, right?
right, right,
um a subdom relationship can also very well play out in a non-sexual context where BDSM doesn't always include sex
yeah,
or sexual acts for that matter,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
And obviously, again, when you come to sadism and masochism, the idea is not that, oh, they want to be punished or they want to have pain or have violence sort of inflicted on them, which is a very like, uh, you know,
Again, these are the
gaslighting.
pop culture understanding of what
Yeah,
BDS.
it's a very, not just
Yeah,
that, but it's also very like, oh, ye pagal hai sort of thing, who wants pain and what kind of cruel person will inflict pain happily on another person. That's the kind of understanding people usually have about sadism and masochism, but it's actually about pushing the boundaries between pain and pleasure.
right.
I don't know how many people who will be watching this video will be able to understand this, but a lot of the times when you climaxed often, there comes a point where pleasuring yourself almost painful, like
Hmm.
um, like when you're sore after a really tough day at the gym. It's
Or like,
not pain that really hurts you or frustrates you or makes you feel sad and miserable. It's a accomplishing sort of pain.
dard, dard. That's what it is.
It's 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 sweet pain, right? We often say that it's a happy sore pain. Our
Right,
muscles have been used to its capacity.
right.
Similarly, the kind of pain that gets exchanged between a sadist and a masochist is of a pushing boundaries, pushing physical boundaries, testing the limits of the person, and the pain experienced comes from with a sense of accomplishment and pleasure,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Which is something that is not often focused upon.
Absolutely. And like what I find personally very interesting is the concept of the practice of a safe word, right? As much as you're giving up control, you're fully in control. As much
Yeah,
as you might be the sub in that scenario, like it's something that's completely yours. That experience is
yeah,
completely and I feel like
yeah,
I know of many BDSM practitioners who also use that space to reclaim some of the power that they lose due to like systemic issues, right, in the society. Like if I were to ask, if were to use a safe word and ask somebody to like stop eve teasing me, it's not like they're going to. Whereas like in this setup, I kind of determine what kind of, in that sense, like if it's humiliation play, then what kind of humiliation I want to undergo and to what capacity. So it's actually like a very powerful, like you said, it's all about power, and it is quite a powerful position to be in. Should you, like, obviously, if you understand it properly, and whatever we say, like the cornerstones are always communication and consent and all those good stuff, right?
Yeah, so I was actually going to come to that, where
Hmm.
I want to clarify certain things before I start talking about like BDSM and everything that it entails that people are not aware of.
Hmm.
The first thing is when we talk about kink, right? A lot of people interchangeably use fetish and kink,
Yeah.
but the difference, the basic difference, if I could oversimplify it and sort of explain it, is that a kink is something that you maybe haven't tried or isn't normal for you,
Hmm.
and something that excites you, something that creates a newer dimension or a greater idea for uh, exploration or sexual gratification.
Hmm.
Whereas on the other hand, a fetish is um, something that is an involuntary need of a certain object or of a certain kind of situation or play to exist, without which the person can't even get aroused.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
when somebody has a somebody has a foot fetish,
It's a
often
more desirable arousal. No, it needn't necessarily be can't even get aroused.
more than often in like um, terms that are also oppressive, like psychological terms or you biomedical terms for that matter. Um,
Hmm.
a fetish is only diagnosed as a fetish if that person is really not able to control their arousal without that particular situation, object, person, thing being present in the scenario.
Hmm. Hmm.
So often there will be a lot of distress if that object or situation is not included, and there will be a lot of distress about, oh, I'm not able to perform, I'm not able to enjoy it. Shame because do I communicate this to my partner? Is the partner going to judge me for this?
Right.
Right? So in like in terms of diagnosis, a fetish is something that the person really can't control and causes a lot of distress if it's not present.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
when coming back to consent and boundaries and BDSM, I actually want to sort of bring to attention that while I've only spoken about the four acronyms of the BDSM,
Right.
there's also boundaries, consent, aftercare, a lot of careful language, communication,
Yeah.
navigating shame, ideas of embarrassment. And I'm
Hmm.
not talking about embarrassment in terms of humiliation play, but embarrassment in terms of this is something that if people knew about me, they would judge me. So, how do I navigate that and
Right.
normalize it for myself while
Right.
I engage in this?
No,
Right?
absolutely.
A lot of unlearning happens in the BDSM community.
Correct.
Safe
Correct.
words, like you said, to the extent where when there are scenes happening. So when there's any kind of sexual party that is
Hmm.
BDSM
Hmm.
happens, they call it scenes.
Hmm.
So you don't hook up and have BDSM sex, but you have a scene because
Yeah.
everybody understands that this is a play, right?
Right. Right.
So oftentimes, if there's like scenes with multiple people and multiple couples or groups involved, not just safe words, but there are also safety monitors present whose
Right.
sole job is to make sure that there is no, even if there's an inkling of something unsafe going on, or someone's safe word is not heard, or someone doesn't know how to use the right equipment, before the person can harm another person, the safety monitor steps in and checks in on people and makes sure that there is no boundaries that are being encroached upon. And I do
Right.
not think that that is something that should be sort of shamed or sort of, just put to the sidelines. I think that is something that we can all learn from uh, the BDSM community and
Absolutely.
sort of integrate it into everyday life. Have people looking for markers of are people safe, not just in a sexual situation, but in an everyday situation. I think
Right.
um, people who are assigned female at birth do this often because we've been taught to protect ourselves and protect other people who are also assigned female at birth, where we're constantly checking in, is this person bothering you? Do you need help? But I think we
Correct.
can make it a practice across the gender spectrum.
No, also like crucial, like you very rightly said, and like I recently started talking to this boy, and I said something about like, oh, compatibility is there or whatever. And then his immediate response was like, what are you looking for a relationship? No, bro, like compatibility and safety, and consent and communication need to be a part of all equations. Okay,
Yeah.
great. That brings me to my final question. Maybe like people have heard this live now and they're super excited to try it out. Maybe you pique their curiosity. So, what's like a good place to start? How can they start maybe thinking about it? What is like one small thing that they can do in terms of like practice without it feeling really overwhelming?
So when you actually put this question up, I was like, huh, how do I tell people how to explore their kinks when I'm also not even done? Like, I can't even say that I've explored to an extent, right? This is something that is a never-ending journey. You will constantly evolve. The more you know, the more you learn. But what
Yeah.
I could think of is like just 4 points that I want people to ask themselves and think about.
Hmm.
The first one being, when you think of getting into anything that is considered kinky by you, understand if there are any biases associated with it. If you
Hmm.
feel any kind of secondhand shame or embarrassment, and try to ask yourself if this embarrassment is your own or is it a learned embarrassment, because that's how society or people talk
Yeah.
about the kind of act that you want to engage in,
True.
you
Yeah.
know?
Hmm.
Because it's very important to know how much we internalize that we don't need to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Second thing is, please read, please
Yeah.
research. Sorry, what?
Yeah. Sorry. No, like the other day I was telling you, it took like the ending of a 6 year long relationship for me to finally feel like I can fart in peace, right? So like, it is internalized embarrassment. That's not my shame. Like I'm a human being. Of course I'm going to fart. So yeah, that's a great tip. Yeah, yeah,
So the second point is read and research. Um, the great part about being in the internet age is that you can access information on the tips of your
yeah.
fingers. Um, and I think the best way, the best places to start, depending on whether you're a visual or a sort of verbose person, is that fanfics and ethical porn. Watch them, look for the most absurd thing. If you've thought about it, someone's probably, like you say, if you thought about it, someone's probably made a porno out of it. So,
Also like Mr. Meeseeks
re-
and it was it Rick from like Rick and Morty. There's like porn about them. So yeah, really, it's all there. It's all there. Yeah.
yeah, so read, research, expose yourself to the act that you are curious about through a secondary medium like watching it on video, watching other people do it on video, or reading about it in a fanfic.
Hmm.
Um, Play with yourself. Nowhere does it say that BDSM has to be a minimum 2+ activity,
Yeah.
right? You can engage in power play with your own self.
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and there is
It's also
learn that there is
off your to-do list, no? Like do power play with yourself and finish all your
yeah
tasks.
yeah, also that talk to people,
Hmm.
talk to multiple people, get multiple opinions, but always know that you are the one who forms your own opinions, because there is absolutely no gatekeeping in kink. If there is anybody who is trying to explain to you how you must kink, then they are not really knowledgeable on kink, because there is no gatekeeping on kink. Like I said, there is no clear definition of kink. What your kinks are, only you decide.
Yeah, that's
So,
the like kink, right? That it is something that does not have that normative idea of what your sexuality or your sexual expression or how you have sex should be. So yeah, very right.
Yeah. So just these 4 points. First one is, check in with yourself, check in with your biases. Second point is to just research, engage with yourself, experiment with yourself. And the fourth would be seek out community. There are beautiful people out there who will educate you just as they were educated by someone else. But also ensure that you don't blindly follow people, because the point of kink is for you to have that self-determination, to have that empowerment to decide what you want to do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's going to be my
Kat
advice.
is amazing YouTuber that y'all can check out. I will link them. I'll maybe share a post or whatever, and you should check her out. She's a trans woman and a kink practitioner, and I learned so much about like BDSM culture from her. So lots of resources available online, like Unnati said. Thank you so much for that, Unnati, and thank you
Thank you
also
for
for
having me.
this was super easy and accessible, and it suddenly makes something like kink seem within reach, and something that is making, hopefully making people curious, if not to try, at least to learn more about. Yeah,
I'm
thank you.
glad that I could do this with you. So
Yeah,
excited.
so
Thank
glad.
you for
We did a live
inviting me.
person, but like that's going to happen soon.
Okay, then everyone have a great evening. Enjoy your Wednesday night and take care. Love you.
Bye.
Love you. Not everyone else. I don't know who you guys are, but like this
Yeah, yeah.
PDA was for Aparupa.
All